we say this every year, but it is hard to believe 24 years ago. So many of us remember exactly what we were doing and where we were and how deeply emotional and how we felt in that moment when we understood what was happening. Take us back to that moment for you, Mike.
Yeah. And Marnie, you make a good point, because that moment took a while to arrive. You know, when these first reports came in and the first images of smoke coming out of the first tower that was hit, it was unthinkable. People were in disbelief that this could be a terrorist attack, that something that elaborate could have been planned, something that horrific, that heinous could have been perpetrated in the United States on the landmarks that so many people around the world recognized. I walked into the Capitol that morning. I was covering the House of Representatives, as I had for many years. Everybody gathered around the monitors as I walked into the press gallery and watching what had happened. You know, remember the initial reports were, well, it must have been some sort of small plane. There must have been some sort of accident, somebody off course. No one in those initial moments thought these are commercial airlines in a coordinated attack. Four commercial planes had been hijacked and flown into these national landmarks. At least that was the plan, one of which was obviously foiled in the fields of Shanksville, Pennsylvania. I was in the Capitol. As it all began to sink in, I ran down to the office of the Speaker of the House, which was just under the Capitol dome, trying to get some information. You know, oftentimes the Speaker is privy to a lot of sensitive or intelligence that oftentimes isn't shared. But in a situation like this, we thought, well, maybe he has something he can tell us about what's happening. Suddenly, all of the staffers in the Speaker's suite started pouring out, running down the stairs, shoes flying off of feet, panic in their eyes, tears in their eyes, really. The Speaker at that time, a man named Dennis Hastert, came out. I said, what's going on? He goes, we're evacuating. Suddenly, all pandemonium broke loose. The police in the Capitol, run for your lives, they were screaming at people. There's a plane 10 minutes out. You could look across from the terrace of the Capitol out the window and see smoke coming from across the river. That, of course, at 9:37, as we look at the president there, 9:37, when American Airlines Flight 77, which had taken off from Dulles Airport, reached as far as southern Ohio before it was hijacked and turned around, was aimed at the U.S. Capitol, was aimed at the Pentagon, I should say. That was American Airlines 77. And that memorial there at the Pentagon on the southwest front, you hate to say it, because almost 200 individuals were killed, both aboard the plane and within the Pentagon itself, including active members of the military and the civilian staff in the Pentagon. But that area of the Pentagon had recently been renovated. It wasn't fully occupied. It could have been even worse. And nonetheless, an unbelievable occurrence. Again, you could see smoke coming from across the river. Suddenly, rumors were flying everywhere. Just to give you an idea of the panic, the State Department was under attack. One rumor was spreading around. That was not true. The National Mall was on fire. Some people were saying. You could hear this over police radios. There was an attack at Union Station, none of which was true, but it's the environment now, the panic, the disbelief, the inability to comprehend what was happening now gave rise to all of these rumors. Down at the White House, the same thing was happening. Police were telling everyone to run for their lives, get out of the way. The so-called doomsday plane that's flown by the Secretary of Defense suddenly appeared and flew down the mall at a very low altitude. So a chaotic situation. And I have to say, on a personal note, Marnie, the heroes of Flight 93 likely saved my life. And I have two children that probably wouldn't be around, because I wouldn't have been around to be their father. So a solemn occasion here in New York, a solemn occasion here in Washington, across the river in Arlington at the Pentagon, and certainly in Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where the heroes of Flight 93 took that plane down and foiled that attempt to destroy our United States Capitol. Marnie.
Vic, thank you for sharing such a personal account. I know each of us, if we were around, and I've expressed and explained it to my own kids, what happened that day and the array of emotions that we felt, it's one of those moments, at least in my lifetime, it's other than having children and getting married, it is a moment in your life that you remember the exact second and that feeling. And every year when we visit these sites and we hold these ceremonies, it takes you right back to that moment and everything that you felt that day. And amidst those emotions, in the face of such evil, our nation came together. in the days and weeks and months that followed. And we put our differences aside and we united in our grief. And in no way am I comparing 9/11 to the events that happened in the last 24 hours in Utah, but we are in a very heated political environment, and I hope that on this day, as we remember the thousands of lives that were lost on 9/11, that we remember we share so much more in common than we do our differences, and that violence is not the answer. Talk, Vic, a moment about just what has happened in Washington following 9/11 and the terror attacks, the 9/11 Commission, the acts that Congress has taken to confront terrorism.
Well, I mean, where do you start? First of all, that night, you talk about the unity and people coming together. Republicans and Democrats in both the House and the Senate suddenly appeared on the center steps, the east front of the Capitol, and spontaneously sang "God Bless America." A moving moment that really affected a lot of people, because even then, people talked about the vitriol and the partisanship that had overcome Washington. And having done this for 35 years in the city, I can say it's even worse now. You're right. Initially, security precautions sprang up, and there was a heightened sense of anxiety and, dare I call it, fear on the part of many people about what to do about securing some of these national landmarks. I live in Bethesda, Maryland, not right next to Walter Reed and NIH. Fences went up overnight. They used to be open campuses. But here in Washington, those iron bollards, those posts that pop up everywhere that stop vehicles from entering, those popped up all over the place. Now, as far as the legislation is concerned, what happened? How did Congress react? Well, we created the Department of Homeland Security. We consolidated all the intelligence agencies under the Director of National Intelligence. Congress took up the authorization of the use of military force, the AUMF, which is still in effect now. And it authorized the war in Afghanistan that began. Every member of the Senate and every member of the House of Representatives, except one, voted to authorize that action against Afghanistan, that one being Barbara Lee, who's currently the mayor of Oakland. So it's, security cameras now, ubiquitous, that we've grown so accustomed to, seeing events unfold on sort of these candid cameras whenever we have an event or an incident or something tragic that would happen is often caught on camera. Those did not exist, of course, before 9/11. So, we could talk all day about the ripple effect, the consequences, and the things that we now take for granted in American life that sprang as a result of this day. It's impossible to overstate the impact that this day 24 years ago had on American society, Marnie.
Yeah, it changed the world that we live in and forever will. The memorial in New York, Vic, for those of us who have had the honor to go and see what is now the Freedom Tower and the memorial around that, I haven't gone to Washington, D.C. and seen the area around the Pentagon and some of the things there. Explain to us what they've done there in remembrance of that day and people like you who were inside the Pentagon, or inside the Capitol, excuse me.
Well, at the Pentagon, they created the Pentagon Memorial. There are benches. It's obviously very understated and solemn, as befitting the occasion that it marks. A bench for every one of the individuals who perished there. Again, 64, I believe, was on the plane, 125 within the Pentagon itself. So that number there with their names are inscribed on those benches near where the President and the First Lady are seated right now, just across the river from Washington, in Arlington, Virginia. At the Capitol, the members of Congress are always very reluctant to up the security around the Capitol, and we've seen that in security incidents that have happened since then. The lack of a fence. Members do not want to be seen as hiding behind a fence. Members want to promote the idea that these office buildings that are adjacent to the Capitol are open. A lot of that hasn't changed. But I will say, in the aftermath of these attacks, the subsequent anthrax attacks on leading members of Congress, remember when they were sent envelopes full of the poison anthrax, which is white powder, and for weeks after that, there were evacuations when the airspace, which had been tightened around Washington, now planes are no longer allowed to fly within the Capitol Beltway, except for commercial airlines that land at Reagan National Airport. But whenever one accidentally ventured into that airspace, we were evacuated. Whenever there was a construction project within the Capitol complex and somebody saw white dust, drywall dust or plaster dust on the floor,